This is TWiT.
All right, Ron, you got the fun one.
Yeah,
you got the whiz bang visuals fun one. Anyways,
well, I was gonna say seamless updates are important, but it's super under the hood. But if you're looking for some sexy cosmetic on top of the hood kind of stuff, come visit Dynamic Island. Kicking myself for not predicting this on recent shows, by the way. But sure enough, after last week's show, when we were talking about that, it's been 2 weeks now talking about the Dynamic Island that is offered in the new version of iOS. I feel like our social media, Twitter, just blew up a couple of days after last week's show. People letting us know, pointing us to various articles. My favorite was the one that, Flo of the show, All About Android, wrote for Gizmodo about the fact that now, yes, you, an Android user, could have a Dynamic Island because there's a new app called Dynamic Spot. Is an app that brings the functionality to Android. There's a couple other ones lurking. And like I said, I'm kicking myself for not predicting that there would be a lot of Me Too, let's replicate this on Android in response to the app. Like bravo to all the developers who scrambled to do it, but of course it comes with a bit of a catch. Dynamic Spot was the one that Flo wrote about in Gizmodo. It's free to download or $5 to use the app on the lock screen. And basically what you can do is you can select which app it uses, and then Flo points out in her article it doesn't allow for moving the Dynamic Island over on devices with non-centered cameras. Right, so a little bit of flaw.
That's a pretty big one. Yeah, I have to imagine they're going to bake that in at some point.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's the thing in the Android world, right? Like cameras are all over the place. You never know where you're going to have a camera.
But here's the thing: Flo points out that this is beta and it's a beta app. But with a little bit of judginess, Flo says, this is simply not the same thing that Apple offers, which is true. It's a lookalike. It's definitely a Me Too kind of thing, but not yet. So this is laying the groundwork for the independent developers to try to make the Dynamic Island concept work on Android, and then give it another 2 versions of Android before it's native to the OS. I think so.
I highly doubt it. There are so many things about this. And I say this, and I don't mean this as an insult to Dynamic Island as like an Android person. I think it's a great feature. And I don't mean this against, devs who are trying this, but this is such, the more I look into the Dynamic Island, the more it is such a special, like, iOS thing. So I didn't know this, but I don't know, maybe everybody knows this, but I didn't. The Dynamic Island is only available on the iPhone 14 Pro and Pro Max.
Pro and Pro Max, that's right.
Which to me is insane because nominally it's a software feature. There really shouldn't be much reason it's not on the iPhone 14, but it's because of the damn camera.
Well, hold on. Are you saying that there's a software feature that's only available on a certain select amount of number of phones?
Is that
another Android play from the Android playbook that Apple picked up or what?
And I mean, it's like okay, so Apple has their walled garden, and now there's like a private island within the walled garden. But that's why this works. And I think the thing that's missing, and I don't want to like drag on the efforts of my fellow Android devs, but like I think the thing that is missing here is that the reason that it only is on this one dang phone is that design. Like you can kind of tell, I mean, like even on Android and presumably on iPhone, you can tell an app where the cutout is. But you can tell from the way the Dynamic Island has been implemented that it's not just that they're sticking stuff around the hole. Like a lot of the content, like if you look at like the photos of the Dynamic Island, like especially for example, the call widget that comes up, they have been very careful about how they are able to design around this dead space.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yep. And so that's design. That's a lot of effort. And it makes sense that you're going to do this on one phone where you know exactly where it is. And so Android, that's just a lot harder. And like just in general, like, sorry, go ahead.
No, go on. Finish it up.
No, but just in general, like being an Android dev is tough because you want it. There's like a push and pull between making something really adaptive that looks good on a lot of things, like in a lot of places, and something that looks amazing in a couple of places. And that's where iPhone really has the advantage, and this makes sense.
Totally agree.
And so if you're a generic developer and want to do this for every Android app, you're going to be putting a lot of work in. And it's just like, even just wrapping content when the user has like super large display size, like text size, or wrapping German. We use German a lot when we try to push the bounds of our like UI testing. It's just really hard to do this generically across a lot of Android apps. Or, so I think it's going to be tough. It's going to always be something that's not quite the same. And I don't discourage anyone from trying it because I'm all for new UI, UX. So either it's like an Android dev doing their best and it's never going to look quite as good in every situation, or it's going to be like Realme, and they're going to start crowdsourcing the important part, which is the design and the idea.
I was just about to. That was what I was trying to jump in here and say is that the other interesting article that comes from it was in 9 to 5 Google, where a friend of the show, Ben Schoon, wrote about what Realme, which is a sub brand of Oppo, has done, which is they basically challenged their community to create a Realme island. That would expand out from their whole punch selfie camera on the front of the phone. And, they point out that the space can be used to display incoming phone call alerts and notifications and more. And, which is all very similar to the conversation that's being had by Apple. But it shows that, there's some thought from other manufacturers about exactly how the dynamic island concept could be used from when to the point that you made, like a organic design of software around the hardware, which I think is interesting. The app that Flo talked about with Dynamic Spot, that is just people capitalizing on the hype and like trying to make something that looks like it never will be. But I feel like, and even though Realme actually clarified that they have no plans to pursue this, they've got their community talking about it, and who knows, they see a good idea come through from the community, they might adopt it and make it happen. So, I think you're right that we won't see it exactly the same way Apple has implemented it, but I wouldn't be surprised if we see it implemented in some way, shape, or form by a manufacturer, because Jason, I remember years ago, the dumb little strip of notifications on the side of Samsung phones all those years ago. Do you remember that? Those, those little display, like finding spots to put notifications. Something you're talking that Android excels at.
The display, the like waterfall display on the side, whatever they call it. What did they call that back then?
I forgot what it was.
Oh shoot, I forgot.
The curve, or I can't remember.
The curve,
was it the curve? Why am I blanking?
I think it was waterfall or something.
It was waterfall.
I don't know if that. Yeah, I can't remember. There was a name for that display. It was like their first couple of phones that had the curved display on the side. And like you said, Ron,
was it the
Edge? The Edge. It was the Edge. There you go.
It was the Edge.
Why did that not? Yeah, I feel like that's so obvious. But anyways, back in the days of the Edge, they, like you said, Ron, put that display was off to the side, and we aren't used to seeing any sort of content there. But now suddenly it's like, oh well, there's a display there. Let's put it to work and let's throw something there. And I could never really get into interacting with that space very much. I'm not saying that others didn't, but it wasn't. Yeah, it just wasn't as obvious to me of a place of interaction.
And the thing is that then we also saw us knockoff devs make apps that do that on the edge of your screen, right?
Yeah, right.
Like this is the great thing about Android, is that anybody with some knowledge of code can do anything that they want and mimic anything. So it's pretty neat. It's just funny to see how the dynamic island concept has ignited the imagination of mobile phone users worldwide.
Yeah, man. I mean, on one hand, the dynamic island, like on Android, it takes the limitation. It does what, has a potential to do what it does on the iPhone, which is there's a limitation. That limitation is that there's this, punch hole camera on the front of the display. How do we, instead of drawing attention to that, how do we like integrate it into something that's useful and everything? So great. So you can do that. I think that the problem though, and I played around with this a little bit, this Dynamic Spot app, is the stuff that comes through there, essentially all it's doing is mirroring notification content from your notification shade into that little area and kind of spacing it around the camera. So it's like technically doing the same thing, but you're right. When like the difference is the integration. And on iOS, they have integrated that particular feature into the software stack so deeply that there is no separation. It's a part of the experience. And here it's slapped on top. And so I'd get this notification and I'd tap it and it wouldn't do the grow out thing where, suddenly it gets bigger. It's like it would take me to my notification tray pulled down and the grow out thing. So it was like, well, and so it was just kind of confusing. It was like, well, wait a minute, what's the point then? Is it just like, you know what I mean? Like I still went to my notification tray. It wasn't the experience was no different. And yes, it's a beta. Maybe they'll figure it out, but it's kind of like, to me, the notification tray already does the things that this dynamic island wannabe genre of apps that are soon to come will want to do, which is basically mirror notifications. And I don't need two different places for those notifications to be.
Listen, wherever we put notifications, they will. That's the Android way.
Yes, that's true. That's very true.
to end on not a grouch note, I think this would be interesting and this would be at an OEM level, because I think that makes most, because that's what's making Dynamic Island great on iOS, is that it's an OEM whose hardware and software is singing together. And I think, if anything, I would be happy to see an OEM taking this as inspiration and doing something cool. I mean, like a lot of OEMs already do on Android, like doing really interesting hardware centered features. So I don't want to poo-poo on it too much, but totally. I'm going to poop on it a little bit. And so I think, what was the title of Flo's article? Was like, oh wait, you can use Dynamic Island on Android now, but you probably shouldn't. I'm kind of in that camp. Sorry, I'm just going to be the grouchy person.
You'll probably be a little disappointed at this stage. Maybe it'll get better.
No. You're both downers. Embrace the chaos. That's what I say. That's what I say.